I grew up hearing the stories of the Bible. My home church, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod congregation, did an excellent job of teaching the stories. And of course, the creation stories were always a large part of that education. Adam and Eve and the 7 days of creation, those two creation stories. But when I was in graduate school, then I discovered the creation language in other parts of the Bible, in the Psalms, Psalm 104, for instance, Psalms 96 and 98, and the creation speeches, the God speeches at the end of the book of Job. That's what I did my doctoral work on. And I find a lot of richness and a lot of variety, actually, in the Old Testament, particularly in speaking about creation. Congregations are probably most familiar with the Genesis accounts. First, the 7 days of creation, and then the second account, the creation of Adam and Eve. And there's, we all know as pastors, as people who have gone through theological education, that we talk about the two creation accounts, the P account and the J account, the Yahwist account. But if you hold those two accounts in tension, or hold them together as they should be, you get a really interesting and a really rich understanding of our place as human beings in the world. So the first creation account, the priestly account, talks about us being made in the image of God. And that's such a responsibility and such a privilege that we are made in the image of God, that we are to act as God acts in the world, with care for creation. And then the second account, speaking of us human beings as being made from the dust of the ground, and God, playing in the mud, as people say, and forming the first human being, and then breathing God's breath of life into that human being. If we hold those two images together, we're both made in the image of God and made from the ground. So it gives us both great responsibility to act as God acts in the world, but also great humility that we share characteristics with the very soil, and we can't forget our connection with either of those two entities. There are other rich images in the Old Testament about creation. As I say, I did a lot of work on the God speeches at the end of Job, where God takes Job on this grand tour of the cosmos and shows Job all these wild, dangerous creatures like the sea and Leviathan and Behemoth and the wild oxen and the lions and the birds of prey. And in that whole vast tour of creation, there's a striking absence of humanity there. So those speeches kind of balance those Genesis accounts where humanity really is kind of the crown of creation. In the Job speeches, God says humanity is part of creation, but not the crown and not the center of creation. So those two creation stories, three creation stories, really kind of balance each other out, and are very important to hear in today's context, where we all know that we as human beings have had such a detrimental effect on the environment and on the non-human creatures and on the soil. We're called to be stewards of creation, but also to know both our responsibility for creation and also our humility, our place as just one of many creatures, and our respect for the rest of creation.